Mr. President, we have a national emergency.
This is one of the things that we can shoot first and ask questions later. Normally you can't do that.
All of a sudden, these trees started moving out of the way. They parted for me. And then I came out into this opening, and there where I saw Jesus Christ.
Back in 1927, an American socialist, Norman Thomas, 6 times candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket, said the American people would never vote for socialism. But he said under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program. He is more imminent.
James Madison, in 1788, speaking to the Virginia Convention, said, "Since the general civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachment of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations."
When men were free.
End Time Prophecy News with your host, W. Dean Shook, is on the air.
Well, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it so very much. It's a fine day to be an American. Today we're going to talk about the social decay, our illegal immigration, poverty, open war on the streets. We're going to talk about what happens when you take God out of society. You lose all moral sense. You lose your moral compass. Things start going south. No offense to you folks in the South. I don't mean it that way. In the second half of our program, we're going to talk about how this came about, a little bit of the recent history that caused this very thing, that we as Americans have been allowing this for the last 20 plus years. We should be ashamed of ourselves. We've had all of this time to try to do something about it, but instead we still go down the same path. You know, just like I talked about the other day. Who is really controlling the country? Who is really calling the shots? Because no matter who we put in office, whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, Bush, Clinton, Obama, nothing changes. Nothing changes. They all make big promises, hope and change, blah, 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 and nothing changes. Why? Because they're not the ones that are calling the shots. It's because they're controlled by the people who fund them, which is the rich, not just the people who have a few $1 million. I'm talking about the ultra-rich group of powerful, ultra-rich people who actually pull the strings, who call the shots, who set the agenda that these politicians go out after, because they're bought and paid for. Every single one of them are bought and paid for, and they all have the same agenda. And this started way back with the establishment of the UN. You know, who paid for the land that the UN sits on in New York? It was Rockefeller. And all we have to do is go back and look at Rockefeller's agenda. He set this up for the UN to be ultimately the controlling power in this coming world government. And it was at that point that we started slowly taking God out of the picture. The more that we take morals, values, some accountability to your Creator out of the picture, what do we get? We get what we have today. Social decay, illegal immigration with an agenda, open wars on our streets. And I'm going to give you some examples of that in just a minute, right after we come back from this short break. Whatever you do, don't go away. Stay tuned.
You're listening to W. Dean Shook, In Time Prophecy News and Current Events. Stay tuned.
Waiting for the winds of change to sweep the clouds away. Waiting for the rainbow.
You can now hear our program on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, Kindle Fire, and more. It's on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. For you, the listeners of the W. Dean Shook program, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Get your first 30 days of the Audible Listener Gold membership plan free. It includes 1 credit, which in most cases, 1 credit equals 1 audiobook. Now, after your 30-day free trial, your membership will automatically renew each month for just $14.95. With your membership, you will receive 1 credit per month plus members-only discounts on all audio purchases. Members also receive 1 audiobook per month. Membership saves up to 30% on additional purchases. Save up to 75% on all CD audio retail prices, plus a free daily audio subscription to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. Now with over 100,000 titles to choose from, all compatible with your iPod, iPhone, Android, Kindle, BlackBerry, and over 500 MP3 devices. Get your free trial today at audiotrial.com/shook. That's audibletrial.com/shook.
All right, thank you for enduring that break. I appreciate it so very much. So what happens when we take God out of the picture? What happens when we take prayer out of the school, when we take him out of the public square, when we take him out of our verbiage, when we try to remove God out of everything that we're doing? We automatically fall into decay because there's no accountability. There's no set morals. Instead, without God's morals, without his structure, we have to come up with our own. And we have a whole generation that's gone through this indoctrination of our public schools of this very thing, where they have been indoctrinated into we are a secular society. We're not a religious society. We're not a godly society. You can come up with your own morals. And in the second part of the program, we're going to look at this. We're going to look at the people that are responsible for this. Who brought in this whole thing about being able to give underage girls in school an abortion without their parents ever knowing, passing out condoms to little kids, telling them alternative ways to have relations with a boy or with a girl, or both, and saying that this is the way that it has to be, and this is what's right, this is what's good, this is what's moral. What about the homosexual agenda, where everyone says that the homosexual agenda has to be accepted as being normal and healthy? I talked about this a couple programs ago, and I got so many emails, my email box was full. I mean, absolutely full, because you didn't like the idea that I put in there in that program, that the perverted things that they want to do and trying to force us as Americans who are opposed to this to accept it as normal and healthy, and I just absolutely refuse. I'm not going to go through that whole thing again. But before we go too far, I want to mention one thing. I have two emails that I've received in the last few days that I want to mention. One was, and I didn't get permission to say these people's names, so I'm not going to do that, but one was from Liverpool, where this woman in Liverpool was telling me that the churches in England are now performing homosexual marriages. And they're telling the people that they have nothing to say about it, that this is the correct thing to do. So it's not just an American. This is a global thing. It's now, granted, it's not in the Middle East, because they'll kill you over there if you claim to be homosexual, if you admit it. They'll kill you quick. I mean, they don't even mess with it. But I want to mention another one. And I didn't get this person's permission to say his name either. But in the last few programs, when we talked about the mark of the beast, this emailer brought up something that I had not thought of. He brought up the possibility that the false prophet would be from the Catholic Church. Well, I have thought that all along. We've talked about that many times, and I believe he's 100% right on that. But he brought up something else that I hadn't thought of. And that was, he mentioned that possibly Germany could be the Antichrist. And as I was reading the email, I stopped for a second, and I thought, well, the Antichrist is a person. And then I went on in the email, and he talked about how Germany had received a deadly head wound in their history. And as I read on, I thought, this guy may have something here. Maybe we are thinking about it in the wrong terms. Possibly. Not saying we are. I'm saying that we have to be open enough to think about it in all terms, because I don't know about you, but when God does things, he always surprises me. He always does things in a way that I say, oh man, I never thought of that. I never thought about this coming about like that. And it just makes me smile, because his ways and his thoughts obviously are not our ways and our thought, and are superior clearly. So is it possible that this be a country or a system in a country and not necessarily an individual man? And I thought about whether the other pieces of this actually fit. If the other pieces of who and what the Antichrist is and how he's described in Daniel and in the book of Revelation, having all of this wealth and power, being able to pass out these riches to those who follow, I thought, well, that's a big calling for one person, even though that seems to be the context that it's in. But if it is a country, if it is somebody like Germany, a country, a system in a country, that could possibly also apply. So I started looking at if the other things, the other prophecies about the Antichrist start to apply. And I've gone through some of them, haven't gone through them all yet. But I want to thank that emailer if you're listening. I want to thank you for sending that because you made me start thinking in another direction, and I like that. That's why your emails are so important. And everybody, feel free to email me with these kind of things because you open doors. You open doors to new thought, which is what I'm trying to do on this program, is open doors to make you think about this critically. This is the point of this program, for you to think about this critically. Read the Bible, read what it says in Daniel and in Revelation, and give it some critical thought. Be open to all possibilities, because these are things that could very well be. These are future events, and we're not going to know exactly how this is going to go down until it actually happens. But this is the reason why I tell people all the time to please send me an email. If you have thoughts or ideas or you have a different direction, open that door. By all means, open that door. We'll talk about it. We'll be honest. We'll be frank about it. The email is contact@wdshook.com, or you can go to the webpage. There's a contact form there that comes directly to my email, and the webpage is wdshook.com, and the email is contact@wdshook.com. All right, now before we start talking about moral standards and how America is falling, I pre-screened a caller that I didn't plan on taking any calls, but I'm going to take this one. His name is Hugh Trolson, and I'm going to bring him up. He has some information he wants to share. Hi, Hugh, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much for bringing me on. My name is Hugh, H-U-G-H, Trolson, T like Tom, R-A-U-L-S-E-N as in Nancy. You can Google my name and see different things on the Internet. I'm standing on my truth, and what you were talking about for the past 20 years related to corruption, it goes way back further than that. And I actually exposed the former federal government bureaucrat back in 1983 via a front-page Wall Street Journal article, which indirectly eventually led to the resignation of Jim Wright from Speaker of the House in shame, the third highest office in the country. It's a very important article to read, and you'll hear me discuss it in the interview on another blog talk show when you Google my name, as well as other things. I've been through pretty much what everybody's going through, plus a whole lot more, and through it all, I discovered that when I can't handle things, I just let go and let God, and I always put my faith in Jesus, and it always works out beautifully in the end. So,
yeah, nice.
Really time to drop the fear and understand that what we are facing right now is 4 points that are controlling us in a greed mode. That's big government, big business, mainstream media, and a lot of the religions are not operating the way Jesus wanted them to operate. He'd be appalled to see what's going on with them.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, if they're building big monstrosity churches that need so much upkeep and that, and not taking care of all the poor people in the community and really doing what Jesus wanted them to do, to minister to the poor, then they're not a church. They're a fraud. So as I say, I'm standing in my truth, and I've had all kinds of amazing things. I've been set up, even arrested from my bed by false accusers, one of whom was some kind of a reverend type who turned out to be like a female Judas Iscariot. She actually perjured herself on paper, and nothing has been done as far as that goes. They threw a whole thing out of court when I presented evidence to show exactly what she was. But these are the ways of today, and all these horrible things that are going on. Again, do what Jesus said. He didn't tell you. He came to forgive us for our sins if you do what he tells you to do, and that is to put God first in all things. And the next is to love your neighbor as yourself. And I don't really judge people as far as the gays and this and that. I let God do that. So I'm not going to pass judgment because Jesus forgave prostitutes and everything back in his day or whatever. So if you can set the moral compass, it starts with yourself. And if you're electing officials that want to do the wrong thing, then why do you keep electing them? So you really have to, the corruption is so rampant, you have to start rooting it out from your own local community and have it ripple out transparently back to Washington, and it's global. There's a global agenda. You were alluding to something at the beginning of the show, and that's certainly correct. These presidents are corrupted by powers behind the scenes that are manipulating, and they have an agenda, and it's not nice.
Yeah. I totally agree 100%. Well, thank you for the call. I appreciate it very much, and I'm going to Google your name, see what we come up with. Thank you for the call.
Okay, thank you very much, and God bless. And it's all about love. That's what Jesus came to teach too. And it's since the beginning, it's been all control, conquer, and divide. But we have the opportunity now to learn to start loving ourselves first, and then coming out with that into the communities and around the world, dropping the racial baloney, embracing our differences, and learning from each other, keeping our heritages, and finding the best from each culture that will pave a way for a beautiful future just from a place of love. Just hold that love.
I agree. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, let's start our discussion. Well, thank you for that call. I appreciate that, and I think that was a good commentary there. So, taking God out of our society, taking him out of our laws, taking him out of our psyche, out of our schools, out of our teaching to our children. We have an entire generation plus. We're starting a second generation of people who are not being taught the morals and values that come from a godly relationship. I mean, after all, he's our creator. Who knows better how we should live than our manufacturer? I mean, think about this. He's given us an instruction manual, and he says if you want your product to operate correctly, then follow the instruction manual. But people don't do that, and they're trying to take that out of there. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have done this. Maybe at Christmas time, you'll go buy your kids something at the store that needs to be assembled, and you take the attitude, I don't need an instruction manual to put this together. And you try to put it together, and you're going, man, I don't know why this thing won't work. Well, the reason it won't work is because you didn't follow the instruction manual. You did things out of order, or you did things wrong. You need to follow your instruction manual. The Bible is our instruction manual on how to live, what our job is, what we're supposed to do. You know, this is not the world that we're intended for. We are not intended to live in a corrupted, evil society that we live in. We were created originally to do the same thing Adam did. In Genesis, he walked with God in the garden in the cool of the day. They walked together. They fellowshipped. They talked. I mean, that's what we were created for. Once we had a fall, everything changed. This is not the world we're intended to live in. Now, when he comes back and restores the earth and mankind to what it was supposed to be, then we'll be in that perfect place. But until then, our job is to, well, read your instruction manual. Everybody in the body of Christ has a job. Your job is not to become rich or prosperous. It's to bring everybody with you to the new kingdom. That's our job. When you go home to be with the Lord, you better not be going alone. You better not walk up to those gates by yourself. You better be taking as many friends, relatives, strangers as you possibly can. You want everyone to hear the good news. You want everyone to be saved from the corruption of this world. The way you're going to do that is by reading your instruction manual, know who and what you are, what your job is, how you're supposed to do it. Read your instruction manual. And that does not mean open it up in the middle of the book and start reading, because you can miss everything before. I was talking to a friend of mine a day or two ago, and I said the very same thing. I used Tom Sawyer as the example. If you open the book of Tom Sawyer right in the middle and start reading, are you going to understand what's going on? Of course not, because you didn't read from the beginning. You didn't read what happened before that. You can't open a math book and get in the middle of fractions when you haven't done the first half of the book that leads up to that, because you won't be able to do it. It won't make sense. You have to start from the beginning of Genesis, from the first word, and you have to read all the way through to the last words of Revelation. And if you don't do that, none of it's going to make sense, and you're going to end up with all kinds of weird things. You're going to take things out of context. It's going to all be screwed up. You know, when you put that bicycle together at Christmas time, you have to go step by step. You can't start by doing the middle things first. Start at the beginning. So what happens? I'm getting off track here, going off on a little rant. I don't mean to do that. So what happens when you take God out of society? We get what we have today: social decay, illegal immigration, poverty, and war in the streets. These war in the streets is what I'm going to give you the first example of. Because moral standards have been falling for decades. And what Hugh said in the call was absolutely true, that it started before this. Actually, it started in the 1700s. From the founding, they tried initializing socialism from the founding of this country. And they've been trying ever since then. And we've resisted up to this point. But just like in the beginning of my program, in the intro, it's true, Americans will never vote in socialism, but through liberalism, they will adopt every aspect of the socialist program. And that's exactly what we're doing. President Obama promised us and said it bluntly, he's going to change America brick by brick. He's not going to come in and do it all at once. It's not going to be a massive civil war. It's not going to be by, all of this stuff. Instead, they're doing it the same way Muslims are trying this new caliphate. It's death by 1,000 cuts. One little baby step at a time. That's exactly what they're doing, and that's what you're letting them do. You're allowing this to happen. Moral standards have been falling for longer than decades, but we're just going to look at the last few decades, because this is where the greatest change has been coming. Now, he's right. There's been change. There's been attempted change for a long time. But it's recently that this has really started to take a big effect. Because we've allowed massive hordes of criminals and gang members and drug dealers to enter into this country illegally. And thanks to our economy, our inner cities are being ravished by poverty. Now, what did we think when we had a combination like this, open borders and an economy that's going in the dumper? Was this kind of combination really going to produce prosperity? Should we be so shocked that we now have open war in the streets of America? Now, maybe if you live in a small town across this country, maybe you're not seeing open war because you're in a small or medium-sized town. Anybody that's in a big city, and there's a lot of big cities across this country, it's open war. The United States today, there's millions and millions of young people that can't find jobs. They're living in poverty. They have no hope for a better future. They've been raised without moral standards. These young people are increasingly desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. For those under the age of 18 living in Detroit, the poverty rate is 60%. So should we be surprised that the Detroit police are now telling people to enter Detroit at your own risk? At this point, the FBI says there's approximately 1.4 million gang members living in our cities. 1.4 million? That number has risen by an astounding 40% just since 2009. Why? Because our borders are wide open. Did we somehow delude ourselves into thinking that there would be prosperity? The president says that the economy's doing great and that we're on the road to recovery. We're nowhere near that. That's a bold-faced lie. Mexican drug cartels are active in more than 1,000 U.S. cities. Are they selling drugs and committing crimes where you live? Well, let me tell you this. They're selling drugs and committing crimes in all of the big and medium-sized cities. So don't be shocked. The federal government's left our border wide open with Mexico for decades. and they're letting through the most violent drug war gang members on the planet. And they're just coming across the border without hesitation because they refuse to secure our border. Well, here's the bottom line. Stupid decisions produce stupid results. When our economy fully crashes, and this is coming, and we've heard about it just in the last few days, that our economy is growing at almost zero. We are barely treading water. Let me share a story from the LA Times. Because it turns out that Latino gangs are systematically pushing back black families out of some areas of Los Angeles. And you folks in LA who are listening to me, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me give you an example. Once upon a time, Compton, if anybody's familiar with the LA area, Compton was a predominantly African American area. Now it's 65% Latino. And there's a relentless campaign of intimidation against African American families that are still there. Now, one of these incidents really recently profiled in the LA Times. It said that a black family moved into Compton near the end of December. And since that time, they've been the victims of endless harassment by Latino gangs. Now, the Times said that a 19-year-old African-American friend came to visit the family one day. 4 thugs told him that blacks were barred from the neighborhood, and they started beating him up with metal pipes. Now, a story in the LA Times described what happened. I'm going to share this story with you. Here's what the LA Times said. The 19-year-old family friend managed to break free that first day and run into the house where the children were the only ones at home. The attackers left, but a half hour later, a crowd of as many 20 people stood on the lawn yelling threats and epithets. A beer bottle crashed through the living room window as the youngsters watched in horror. They were scared. If they called the sheriff, they'd be killed. So they called their mom, who called the sheriff's department. The gang members were gone by the time the deputies arrived, but they kept coming back almost daily, driving by slowly until they got someone's attention, then yelling racial insults and telling them to leave. The mother sent the children to live with their relatives, and she's now packing up herself to leave. These Mexican gang members go to an African-American neighborhood and start driving the African-Americans out. This is their neighborhood. They've been there for years. I've been to Compton. Is this racial? Of course it is, but is anybody saying anything? No, because they're Mexican, which is also racist. No matter where racism is coming from, it needs to be exposed and stopped, but nobody is saying anything because they're Mexicans. If you say anything about Mexicans, here's the deal. You are a racist bigot. You cannot say anything. It's considered hate speech. The same as if you say anything about homosexuals. It's considered you're a homophobic, and it's hate speech. Say anything about Islam. That's hate speech. They're trying to regulate what you can say. Now, according to the LA Times, similar attacks have taken place in Harbor Gateway, Highland Park, San Bernardino, Canoga Park, Wilmington, and a lot of other places. Here's what happened in Oakland, up the coast in Oakland. Violent gang war has gotten so out of hand that city officials are holding press conferences about it. Violent crime in the city of Oakland increased by 23% in 2012. Police say that gang members were responsible for most of the approximately, listen to this, 2,000 robberies and 65 homicides that took place in the second half of the year. In a 6-month period, 2,000 robberies, 65 homicides by these gang members. San Francisco Chronicle recently explained the violence continues to escalate. City officials don't know how to solve it. And here's what the Chronicle said. Nearly all of the violent crimes in Oakland in the last few months, including 2 killings over the weekend, have been committed as part of a war between rival groups that was sparked by the slaying of a girl last summer. According to Howard Jordan, who's the police chief, Jordan said about 90% of the killings, robberies, shootings, and other senseless acts of violence in the city since mid-2012 can be directly tied to the killing of a girlfriend of one of the combatants. Over time, the warring factions have become increasingly violent. They have grown in numbers, sometimes by merging with other groups. Jordan said at a news conference call in response to an outbreak of gunfire over the weekend. What about Chicago? Savage murders happen so regularly in Chicago at this point, very few police are even shocked by the headlines. The murder rate in the city increased by about 17% in 2012. 2013 has already started with a big bang. Here's what happened last Saturday. 7 people were murdered. 6 others were left wounded. And here's what the Chicago Tribune said about this. 1 West Van Buren Street. A body could be seen lying in the roadway near the curb at a bus stop. A man who only identified himself as the teen's victim's uncle said the boy, whose family lived nearby, had simply gone to run an errand. He was just going to the store, the man said. They just killed him, just like that. Later, the man paced back and forth on the sidewalk, shaking his head in disbelief. Why has Chicago become such a violent city? It's because of the gangs. Today, approximately 80% of all murders that happen in the city of Chicago are gang-related. There's only about 200 police officers that are assigned to Chicago's gang enforcement to handle 100,000 gang members that live in the city. 200 police officers to handle 100,000 gang members. Maybe Chicago should do more to handle all the crime if they had more money, right? But at this point, they're flat broke. So the entire state of Illinois. In fact, the state of Illinois is just had its credit rating downgraded again. You know, once upon a time, gang activity was fairly limited to certain pockets of certain areas. Not anymore. Drug cartels are actively operating in 50 different cities in 2006. By 2010, the number had skyrocketed to 1,286 cities. Let me tell you this again. 2006, these gangs operated in 50 cities. 2010, 4 years later, they operate in 1,286 cities. This growth of the gang members is skyrocketing. Most of these are at least 2/3 illegals who are pouring across our border. And these are the same people that they want to give amnesty to. So you say, well, no, it's not. They say you have to pass a background check and a criminal check and blah. Well, here's the fact. According to the proposal, the way I read it, as soon as they apply, before any of these things, before they pay any back taxes, before they go through any of the checks, before they do all of this stuff, they get a green card first. They get a green card so they can work and get a driver's license. Then we're going to start the process. Then we're going to go through the background checks. Then we're going to start the process of paying your back taxes and going to the back of the line and all of this other baloney and securing the border. Well, we've been through this before. If you remember when President Reagan did this very same thing, what happened? The idea was they were supposed to seal the border, stop the illegal migration across our southern border, and in return he would give the ones, President Reagan, the ones that were here, amnesty and allow them to stay. So the amnesty went through. They were allowed to stay, but none of the other things ever happened. They didn't seal the border. They didn't all the other things. A big long list of things that they promised to do for this amnesty was never done, and nobody ever did anything about it. Now they're doing the exact same thing. Why? Because it's worked before. It'll work again. Because Americans are lazy, and let's face it, they're ignorant. Not stupid, ignorant. Now, you may say, oh, yes, they are stupid, but no, they're really ignorant. They've been dumbed down. Ignorance can be fixed. Stupidity and ugly cannot. But ignorance can be fixed. You can do your part for your country by helping to fix that ignorance. Oh, my goodness. Well, so here's the deal. Having a little computer glitch here. All right. So, this kind of growth of the gang members is the proof in the pudding that when the Obama administration or when the media start telling you that everything's fine, the number of illegals crossing is decreased, that border security is working because they've done this and they've done that, obviously that's a lie. And all you have to do is look at the news around the country and see that none of this is true. None of this is true. You know, if there's any question about any of these things, it's easy to understand that it's all there. It's all information. It's all available. All you have to do is go out there and get the information. All right, I'm going to take a short break here. When I come back, we are going to look at some of the people who are responsible for this kind of stuff. So don't go away.
You're listening to W. Dean Shook, In Time, Prophecy News, and Current Events. Stay tuned. For you, the listeners of the W. Dean Shook program, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Get your first 30 days of the Audible Listener Gold membership plan free. It includes 1 credit, which in most cases, 1 credit equals 1 audiobook. Now, after your 30-day free trial, your membership will automatically renew each month for just $14.95. With your membership, you will receive 1 credit per month plus members-only discounts on all audio purchases. Members also receive 1 audiobook per month. Membership saves up to 30% on additional purchases. Save up to 75% on all CD audio retail prices, plus a free daily audio subscription to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. Now with over 100,000 titles to choose from, all compatible with your iPod, iPhone, Android, Kindle, BlackBerry, and over 500 MP3 devices. Get your free trial today at audiotrial.com/shook. That's audibletrial.com/shook.
Yeah.
our friend Georgia Red. What a wonderful song, huh? You can find Georgia Red's music on Amazon.com. I would encourage you to go get one or all three of his albums that are available there. They're not super expensive, and it's good quality, Christian, clean music. By all means, go check out Georgia Red. All right. So I'm going to look at the most recent first. And the most recent is what President Obama is doing to this country. Because, you know, he promised hope and change. We're responsible for the hope. He's responsible for the change. We were hoping for some good change, but it's not what we got. Unfortunately. Instead, what we did get is he's turning us into North Korea. What is North Korea? Why would I say that? Because North Korea is one of the most tyrannical countries in the world. They have the most human violations in the world. You know, the United States is being more like North Korea all the time. It's a totalitarian police state. It's a hellhole where the state supreme ruler, the leader, is worshipped. No dissident is tolerated. The government micromanages everything, virtually everything. Now, is America supposed to be the opposite of that? Well, Obama is implementing his version of change. It's promised to engage in the remaking of this nation, to transform it, according to him, quote, brick by brick. He has a tremendous cult personality. And there's a cult that's been built up around Obama. Under his leadership, the government has become larger. It's more repressive than ever before. Is this the change you bargained for? The truth is that we need to make America the opposite direction of where Barack Obama's trying to take us. We need a smaller federal government, not somebody who's going to literally hold our hand from cradle to grave. We need a greater emphasis on the preservation of our freedom and liberties. What we need and what we're getting is two very different things. Obama appointed numerous socialists and communists to important positions in his administration. You may not have known this. Obama named Van Jones. Do you know who Van Jones is? He's a longtime revolutionary communist who famously declared that we are going to change the whole economic system, and he's been made the Green Jobs Czar in 2009. He appointed Carol Browner, the former commissioner of the Socialist International Party. She is the environmental czar. He appointed John Holdren, who not only views capitalism as a system that's inherently destructive of the environment, but strongly favors the redistribution of wealth both within the U.S. and across international borders. He is now our science czar. He named Hilda Solis, a former officer of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. This is the socialist wing of the House of Representatives, as his labor secretary. He chose Anita Dunn as the woman that he cited Mao Zedong as one of her favorite political philosophers. Now, she serves as a White House communication director. You know, there's a man named Paul Roderick. Paul Roderick Gregory is his name. And he wrote an outstanding article for Forbes about the economic agenda that matches the Declaration of Principles of the Party of the European Socialist almost point for point. Now, if a totalitarian regime is going to be successful, it needs a massive government bureaucracy to run things. Today, the number of employees of federal government is roughly equivalent to the entire population of the United States in 1976. I'm not kidding. North Korea dissidents are brutally repressed. In the United States, we've continued to move rapidly in that direction under Obama. In a recent article on Obama's war on whistleblowers, he said one thing, and he did another. As president, he usurped dictator powers, he wages war on truth, he targets whistleblowers, and he prioritizes surveillance powers. He took over the same thing that Bush was doing. And, in fact, increased it. And let me give some examples. Warrantless wiretapping has increased. Accessing personal records has increased. Monitoring financial transactions has increased. Tracking emails, internet phone calls is all done lawlessly to gather secret evidence. In a book, Necessary Secrets, Gabriel Schoenfeld said that he presided over the most draconian crackdown of leaks in our history, even more than Nixon. At the same time, Obama is betraying the public trust. He targets free expression. He pursues police policies to persecute and intimidate. He considers anyone who is anti-abortion, who is in favor of God, who is in favor of your Second Amendment rights, your Fourth Amendment rights, your First Amendment rights, you are now a dissident. You are now a threat to the state. You go against the policy, and you may very well be on the watch list and not even know it just because of the way you voted. Programs like mine, I may very well be on that watch list. Others like me may very well be on that watch list. You know, we're witnessing the bipartisan normalization and legitimization of a national surveillance state. Under Obama, the United States has been developing this big brother surveillance technologies that dictators of the past never dreamed were possible. Let me give you some examples of that. A highly sophisticated surveillance grid known as trapwire is being installed in major cities and high-value targets all over this country. But you know what? The mainstream media has not covered this at all. Most Americans don't even realize that this exists. The Obama administration that came up with See Something, Say Something campaign. The federal government has even created an iPhone app that's designed to encourage all of us to take photos of suspicious activity and report our neighbors to the authorities. They want you to squeal on each other. It was the Obama administration that first instituted the enhanced pat-downs. Not the pat-downs, but the enhanced pat-downs at the TSA. As a result of that, countless men and women, children, have had horrific experiences going through these pat-downs. I've heard of things like elderly people with a colostomy bag having to take that colostomy bag off and prove that what's in it is what's supposed to be in it. Do I need to get graphic to explain that? If you have a colostomy bag, they want you to take it off and prove that what's in it is actually, come on. U.S. military now has the authority to arrest American citizens and hold them indefinitely without trial through this NDAA that Obama signed. And the Obama administration has no problem with that. A key ally in the House of Representatives, Congressman Joe Serrano of New York, has introduced a measure that would repeal the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution so that Obama can continue to run for additional terms as president after his second term ends. They want more. You know, there's also this cult of personality that's built up around Obama. And really, it's getting kind of ridiculous. You know, shortly after he won the most recent election, Jamie Foxx referred to Obama as our Lord and Savior, Barack Obama, during a television broadcast of Soul Train awards in Las Vegas. They're making songs about him. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. Oh my goodness, I just can't believe these people are doing this stuff. Well, and we as Americans are letting them. There is relentless praise from the mainstream media, and it's played a huge role in Obama's election victories. The media has supported every objective that Obama has come up with. They tirelessly support everything he does. Well, once in a while, you'll hear a little blurb about something that's disagreeable, but they'll just say that, you know, it's the flat worlders and those of us who are or against abortion and pro-gun. You know, we're the weirdos. We're the reason for all of the problems in this country. Of course we are. Well, of course we are. Has nothing to do with them. A massive abortion, over 1 million babies a year being murdered in their mother's womb through eugenics of Planned Parenthood and their 800 plus affiliates across this country. That has nothing to do with that, right? Abortion on demand. Communist Party USA is cheering Barack Obama. Yay! Because he is making all of these efforts to disarm the American people. According to one of their applications, the ability to live free from the fear of a threat of a gun violence is fundamental democratic right, one that far supersedes any so-called personal gun rights allegedly contained in the Second Amendment. Remember, Barack Obama says that the Second Amendment is a living, breathing document that needs to change with the times, that it's fundamentally flawed. Thank you so much for that. That's what he believes. The Affordable Care Act, also called Obamacare, could subject smokers to premiums that are 50% higher than usual. Or if you're a smoker and you're overweight, you could be denied completely. This is an effort to control your behavior. You need to step up and do what the state tells you to do, or they're going to cut you off. They're going to cut you off. You do not have the right to be overweight. You do not have the right to smoke. And if you do, there will be trouble. You need to toe the line and do what the government tells you to do. Otherwise, you're cut off. And if you're over 60, a smoker could pay penalties as high as $5,000 in addition to the premiums. The Associated Press reports that a 55-year-old smoker's penalty could reach $4,250. The older a smoker is, the higher the penalty will be. It's going to control you. Obama has gone to great lengths to demonize his opposition. Since he's been president, numerous government papers, studies, reports have been released that identify groups of people that are opposed to Obama as potential terrorists. Some of these groups targeted as potential terrorists are people who are for individual liberty. How dare you? Conspiracy theorists. Oh, you can't be saying that kind of stuff. Some returning veterans may be terrorists, according to them. Anti-abortion activists. Those who visit extreme websites might be a dissident or a terrorist. Those who are fiercely nationalistic. Oh, you can't do that. And those who believe in the right to bear arms. Anyone that's opposed to illegal immigration. Anyone that is anti-UN. Anyone that is suspicious of centralized federal authority. can be labeled a terrorist. You can be arrested and detained without charges indefinitely. And it's not just limited to the United States. I read a story today where, for those of you who probably don't know, Israel has attacked with F-16s. They have attacked the chemical laboratories and depots in Syria, because Syria is allegedly, from what I've read from stories, has turned over these chemical weapons to Hezbollah. Now, these plants where they were stored and the laboratory were created and a fleet of trucks that was lined up ready to transport them wherever they go was being guarded by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. So what does this tell you? Iran has their Revolutionary Guard in Syria guarding these chemicals that are being turned over to Hezbollah, who is a Iranian terrorist group. Do you see the connection here? An Iranian terrorist group, Hezbollah, has received these chemical weapons from Syria, so Iran sent the Revolutionary Guard over there to guard Hezbollah's newfound chemical weapons. Well, Hezbollah is dedicated to wiping Israel off the map. Israel considers this an extreme threat because they're right there in Syria, right across the border. So they took their F-16s over there and they wiped them out. They said, you're not going to use these against us, and they hit them. Well, according to the story that I read today, they're claiming, I don't know if there's any truth in this, but the world is claiming that Obama gave Israel the green light to do that. Now, who is Obama to tell Israel that they can or can't do anything? Israel, if they have an ounce of brains, is going to be responsible for their own security and make their own decisions and not let some nut roll in another country, a leader of another country, tell them how they're supposed to secure their people or their borders or their country. Now, you folks in Israel, and I know there's some that listen in Israel, man, you make your own decisions. Who cares what Obama says? You take care of you. Nobody's going to take care of you like you. All right? That's the bottom line. We don't care. Don't take any garbage from any of these other world leaders or the UN or any of these other people. You make your own security decisions according to your own intelligence, your own feeling of your people, what it takes to keep you secure. You make those decisions, nobody else. There is no Obama getting a green light or a red light for anything. You take care of yourselves. You have the power, you have the will, you have the Lord behind you. Do what you feel you need to do. Screw the rest of these people. Excuse my French. Now, let me say this. Now that Obama's been reelected, he's already secretly pledged to the Palestinians that he's going to press Israel into a new round of so-called peace negotiations. They want, well, some want this two-state solution. This two-state solution cannot work. The land of Israel, including the West Bank, belongs to Israel. Now, it doesn't matter whether their neighbors agree with it or not. It doesn't matter. It still belongs to Israel. The West Bank belongs to Israel. They never should have gave up Gaza. It belongs to Israel. In fact, the Sinai belongs to Israel. And it always has. And these other people that say they don't belong there, it's not their land, it's been their land for almost 4,000 years. They have selective memory and selective history. Well, you know, the negotiator that Obama wants to push into these peace talks told the Palestinians that Obama will renew talks with the Palestinians, take them back to these 67 borders, meaning that the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and eastern Jerusalem would go out of Israeli control. Well, there's a problem with that. If those sections of Israel are gone, there's no way for Israel to defend itself. And for those of you who don't understand that, go look at a map of Israel and see what happens if they give up East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza. They're already in this tiny little strip of land. Well, their neighbors don't want them to have any land at all. Zip, zero, nada. I'm kind of getting off track here. I want to go back to the original subject and not get too far along. I want to talk about who is responsible. Who is responsible for the recent changes that brought us to where we're at now. And I'm going to start with the Clinton administration because, Bill Clinton is the one that signed Agenda 21 and brought it through executive order and brought it into U.S. policy. And this is important. Now, George H. Bush is the one that went to the U.S. and signed it and said that, yes, the U.S. will be part of Agenda 21. Well, it was Bill Clinton and Al Gore that brought it into policy, and things have gone downhill rapidly since then. So this is where I want to start. And let me say something about Hillary, since she's been the limelight here lately. She continues to look the other way when blame comes. She just says it's all just a right-wing conspiracy. None of this is true. It's all right-wing conspiracy. When it's not. It's the truth. It's just another lie out of the Democrats. Here's a woman with a long list of things like shredding Vince Foster's documents in the Rose Law Firm. Do you remember when Bill Clinton was in office, how their land dealings with the Rose Law Firm came up? They were cheating then. Ordering members of the healthcare task force to shred documents that were the target of this court trial, and they made him shred those documents. Ordering the removal of documents from Vince Foster's office and telling the aides to lie about it. And by keeping her billing records and documents that were under subpoena in the White House residence, where they couldn't come and get it. What are they hiding? The truth is not a virtue that Hillary Clinton inspires either. She lied to investigators about her knowledge about those billing records. She lied to investigators about the involvement in the Castle Grande land deal con. She lied to investigators about her involvement in the firing of the travel office employees right from the very beginning. In December of 1997, Justice Department and the White House were found guilty of lying under oath and obstructing justice. They were ordered by a federal judge to pay a $285,000 in attorney fees to the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. This brought to a close this AAPS versus Hillary Clinton lawsuit filed after Hillary's healthcare task force repeatedly met in secret to socialize the healthcare system. Do you remember the Hillary healthcare system? They did it. Obama did the same thing that Hillary did. They lie, they cheat, they steal. There's backroom deals. There's bribes. Bribes were really big, especially in the Obamacare thing. They were promising all kinds of bribes to all kinds of people to vote for it. Even when Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid came out and said, in order to know what's in it, you got to pass it. And people passed this thing without ever reading it. These are people that you voted into office. These are people who have acted the same way ever since the George H.W. Bush administration, right up to today's administration. Virtually nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. Why? Because they're not making their own decisions. They are being controlled. Yeah, they're given a little bit of leeway, but they are being controlled. And Hillary's hands were stained with the blood of children because of her utter concept of the rule and law of breaking the bond between children and parents. Now, why do I say that? Because ever since then, this has been an authoritarian, totalitarian regime. You know, they sought to destroy the traditional family by severing these bonds between parents and their kids. You know, and Adolf Hitler understood that if he were to control the German people, he had to first control the children. He started by first taking charge of the children and educating them on his racist view. He taught them it was okay to kill and torture Jews. And anyone who shared indifferent ideas before it was over were jailed. They're dissidents. They disagree with the government. We see the same trend today. Our schools are teaching children that Christianity is the root cause of environmental deterioration and homophobic attitude and hate. All children are empowered through child welfare laws and agencies to turn in their offending parents. I'm not kidding. Here's what Hillary said. Children should have a right to be permitted to decide their own future if they're competent. Decisions about motherhood and abortion, schooling, cosmetic surgery, treatment of venereal disease, or employment, and others where the decision or lack of one will be significantly affect the child's future should not be made unilaterally by parents. That's a quote from Hillary Clinton. And ever since then, everyone has had that same attitude right up to this point. Now, I'm not kidding. This is a quote from her. Let me read this quote again. Children should have a right to be permitted to decide their own future if they're competent. Decisions about motherhood. Now we're talking about children should have the right to make these decisions about motherhood and abortion. Excuse me, schooling, cosmetic surgery, treatment of venereal disease. Why would a child have venereal disease? And other decisions or lack of will significantly affect the child's future should not be made unilaterally by parents. That's Hillary Clinton's view. She is a fierce proponent of the radical left chaired the New World Foundation. It was from 87 to 88. Oh, excuse me. I got a bit of a cold here. You know, this woman and her husband are the ones that started the village concept. They're the ones that believes that the state is benevolent and that it would transcend the Orwellian Big Brother role and become a surrogate parent. That it would grant your children rights and be their legal guardian over you, the parents, who lose those rights and you are no longer the guardian. Hillary's Villages not only tolerates but encourages crime, drugs, pornography, homosexuality, unrestrained sex, disease, broken families, destructive but politically correct behaviors. Bill Clinton is a role model for children. Excuse me, I got something in my throat here. How would you like Bill Clinton as a role model for your kids? The guy who had sex with an intern and then lied to Congress about, I did not have sex with that woman. Barefaced lie. And he was impeached for that lie. But yet, he's the hero of the Democratic Party. Their hero is not only cheated on his wife, lied to Congress about it, was impeached of office. That's their hero. He also had a huge role in campaign finance abuses, Whitewater, development corporations, Filegate, selling secrets to the Chinese in exchange for development contributions, laundering drug money through ADFA. That's the Arkansas Development of Finance Authority. The drug running operation of the meat cartel. It all sends messages to our kids who are paying attention. Oh, excuse me. It says that lying is okay. My goodness. Sorry about that. Because he's been lying all along the line to the point of being thrown out of office. And he's their hero. He's to be looked up to. He has policies that we should be embracing. That's why I say that they demonstrated and advocate crime. Lying is a viable alternative. Now, consider all the people who are presumed to be casualties of these scandals, including the fundraising at Whitewater, Morgan Stanley, the Arkansas drug smuggling, Travelgate. I mean, just from the very beginning, it's all just been a lie, sham from the very beginning. Al Gore, all a part of all of that. What about Janet Reno? Do you remember Janet Reno? Amazon of a woman. It was Janet Reno who fabricated charges of child molestation against the Branch Davidians. Now, there may have been some child molestation there. From what the media said, that that this guy was ordering all of the wives to come to him on a nightly basis and to send their children to him. That's what the news media said, but Branch Davidian denied that and said that none of that is going on. You remember Janet Reno sent a tank in there. She sent a tank to their house and started firing this tank at their house. This kind of mentality exists today. It's even more extreme today. She demonstrated to our children that brute force is a valuable alternative. And it was her unprecedented order that moved more than 100 stormtroopers who invaded a neighborhood in a child custody case. Do you remember this? Poor little Elion. Poor little Elion. Do you remember that? The kid from Cuba? Man, what a disaster that was. What about Madeleine Albright? See, from the very beginning, all of these people, I'm pointing these people out because this is where it started, because nothing has changed. These same types of people are still in the administration. They were in the Bush administration, and they're even more radical in the Obama administration. You think all of this stuff is ridiculous? It's even more ridiculous today because people are more extreme than even Janet Reno or Madeleine Albright or any of the feminists that started this whole thing. You know, and let me say this about the feminists. These false teachers of feminism, they teach a false lifestyle of unrighteousness. They prey on weak-willed women. These women that started this are man-haters. They believe that, what they're trying to do is to break the bond between men and women. They're trying to create a divide, because how do people like this, like the Obama administration, like Hitler, like Stalin, like Marx, like Mao Zedong, how do all of these people attempt to have control over the people? Napoleon said, and all of these people say the same thing, it's divide and conquer. You divide everybody and then divide it again, because a house divided cannot stand. So their goal is to divide everything. Divide the children and parents. Divide the husband and wife. Divide the Democrats and Republicans. Divide the straights and the homosexuals. Divide. Everybody needs to be divided up and against each other, because a house divided cannot stand. That's where the government steps in and takes over. They create the problem and then come in as the savior with the grand solution for the problem that they created, and then blame somebody else. and most Americans just say, yep, that's what it is. It's someone else's fault. It's not their fault. It's someone else's. Well, what about this, that, and you're allowing this? It's somebody else. It's not me. Oh, my goodness. You've got to be kidding me. Well, let's see. Who else did they put in their administration? Betty Friedan, founder of NOW, who once preferred the traditional family life as comfortable, now considers it a concentration camp. The American family, traditional family, is a concentration camp, and this is what they're telling women. One of the feminist movement, most respected leaders, spokeswoman, said, since marriage constitutes slavery for women, it's clear that the women's movement must concentrate on attacking marriage. They're convincing women that they are slaves in bondage when they're in marriage. Patricia Ireland, head of the National Organization of Women, NOW, National Organization of Women, NOW, said that the pro-family organization called Promise Keepers was a threat to women. Promise Keepers, the men of Promise Keepers, promise to love their wives, their children, their neighbors as themselves, and in keeping with the teachings of Jesus Christ. Now, according to the New Testament, is a threat. This is all a threat to women. To accomplish their goals, they've organized things like the National Organization for Women, Planned Parenthood. Now, I've told you about Planned Parenthood many times before. It started out as a racist eugenic organization in New York City in the early 1900s with the goal of eugenics of utterly destroying the race of anybody they deemed not fit to reproduce. Go back and listen to my program on abortion. I explain the whole thing. I don't have time here today. The people of the American way, the gay lesbian caucus, unrestrained sex, homosexual rights, abortion on demand. They attack Christian beliefs, conservative organizations, and the traditional family structure of America. In order to accomplish that, they have to take God out of the scene, take him out of the public eye, take him out of the minds and hearts of everyone so that all of these things can be set in place. They can destroy the American family. Divide, divide, divide. National Education Association is dividing through their indoctrination not only the students, dividing the students among themselves, they're dividing the students from the rest of America, they're dividing the students from their parents. They had a completely pagan cabinet. Pagan. Carol Browner, big subscriber to the Earth in Balance. Donna Shalala, you remember her? She's the most vicious Christian hater ever to hold a top cabinet post. Absolutely hates Christians and everything that it represents. Melanie Verver, she was with a political group called, what were they? The People of the American Way, and also part of the American Civil Liberties Union. Do I need to say more? All right, I'm about out of time, which is unfortunate because I could rant and rave and ramble for quite a while here, but I'm sure those that are monitoring this program are probably tired of hearing this. And they say, yes, we are. Well, thank you for joining me. Come to my webpage, wdeanshook.com. Send me an email, contact@wdeanshook.com. I hope to see you on our next program. Until then, since I have rambled my way right out of time, then I will see you on our next program. Please listen to these important sponsors before you go away, though. Thank you. I love you all. Thank you.
You're listening to W. Dean Shook, In Time, Prophecy News, and Current Events. Stay tuned.
Waiting for the winds of change to sweep the clouds away. Waiting for...
Stitcher? Well, we're on it, so go get it. Stitcher is an award-winning provider of news and talk radio for your mobile phone. Download it free at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio.